Hey, I'm Big Lou Barbecue, and other things I want to do, and let me introduce you to somebody. This is Chewy. Chewy was supposed to be my wife's lap dog, but guess whose lap she sits in when we're watching TV? She's Chewy. You know what wasn't Chewy? That brisket I did the other day on the Barrel House cooker. Oh, y'all, that was a delicious, tender brisket. Now, here's the trick. Barrel House has two models, the 14D, which is taller and more slender, and the 18C, which is shorter and wider. And I looked on the Barrel House website and it said if you're going to do a brisket on the 18C, cook it, just lay it on the grate, fat cap down so that it doesn't burn. Or split it into the two muscles, the point and the flat, and hang it. I watched Meathead hang an entire packer brisket on his Barrel House 18C, and he had a little accident as he did it. Now, he recovered admirably from it, and he had a good brisket, but I wanted to avoid that accident. So I looked on there, it said split it or I grate it. I called Jeremy and Andrew at Barrel House and talked to them personally, nice fellas, and they gave me some advice. I've never split a brisket before. I thought I would try it. Y'all, I'm gonna speed a lot of this video up and voice over it to save your data plan and your sanity. All right, but this brisket turned out well. Look at the end of it. My whole family is part of the taste test. Oh, this brisket was good, y'all. Thanks for watching Big Lou Barbecue. All right, what I've got here is a budget brisket. I like budget briskets because they are cheaper than that regular $45 price, y'all. I bought it at the Walmart. It's a Angus USDA choice, and it was quite flexible too. Look at it bend like that. That select one I did on my UDS last year was about as easy to bend as a 2x4. All right, I've got it out of the package. I rinsed it off, dried it off with paper towels. Sorry, I bumped the camera. And now I need to start trimming it. I'm going to trim most of this fat off of this part here at the point. You see that line of fat right there? That's what separates this muscle here, which is the flat, from the point, which is right there. All right? And so I'm going to be cutting into that part there. And this is all a bunch of hard fat. We're just going to dig it out. And we're going to cut off most of this here on the top. This right here, extremely hard. I mean, it's got to come out. So I'm going to speed the camera up as you watch me do this, but that's the process. All right, I take a sharp knife and I start digging in along the point right there and then along the bottom of the flat and just digging wedges of that fat out. That fat runs all the way through the brisket out to the other side. You can see it on the underside, separating the flat muscle from the point muscle. And it's just got to come out if I'm separating these two pieces of meat, all right? So I dig a ways in there, just like that. And once I get away, good ways in there and got a little hole cut out, I'll start cutting some of the fat cap off the point part and off the flat part. We'll skip ahead right here and show you what it looks like. Yeah, I did get some of the red meat off of there, but that's okay. We're going to use that a little bit later. All right. This hole right here runs into this part here where we split the flat and the point, and that's what I'm gonna start working on right now. Just carve a little wedge of that fat out like that and just come on all the way down here. I'm using a fish fillet knife to do this. Whatever knife you use, just make sure it's sharp. All right, we'll go back to high speed mode now. All right, I just keep digging through there, cutting along the flat side, cutting along the point side, and digging out wedges of that fat. Now, if I get a little red meat, that's okay. I'm going to use the red meat to make a beef broth. I'll show you how I do that, or part of how I do that. And that's what we're going to use to help spritz the brisket as I cook it, all right? Cutting a lot. That fat was really hard that runs in between there, and it doesn't render out very well. If you cook a whole packer brisket and you slice them together, you've got that fat in between them. So I kind of actually liked splitting it like this, all right? And as I dig it out, I pull the flat away from the point. I have to cut it away right there, and I just start cutting at it. And you can see it's starting to split apart right there. All right, I'm starting to pull it off. And of course, I'm no expert. I'm not a competition guy. I don't do that many briskets, maybe just 2 or 3 a year. And I've never split one before, so I'll start to make a mistake right here and start to actually cut through the point muscle. You'll see that right there. You can see how I've started to actually cut through the muscle and not the fat. I got to go back and correct that here in just a second. You'll see me do it as I pull this away. And then that's when I notice, yeah, I'm cutting through the muscle. So I had to go back under and cut the fat right there to cut it off. But you know what? Like I said, I'm just a backyard barbecue guy. I'm not a professional meat cutter, brisket cook, chef, competition guy. I just like to do this as a hobby. So yeah, I made a mistake, but you know what? Life goes on, right? All right, but then I corrected it, and then the point just comes off and the flat comes off like that. All right. It looks like that right there. There's the point. It's got a lot of fat in it, and I'll be trimming it up some more here in a minute. This is the flat. Still got a lot of hard fat right there that's got to come off. All right, so I continued to trim up the flat and the point. All right, and flat looked just like that. Now the grain of this flat was running from the tip of the piece of meat on the left-hand side of your screen to the tip on the right-hand side of your screen. So I cut it perpendicular to the grain when it's done. All right, but that's what it looked like. I tried to remove some of the silver skin off the back, but I left most of it there. All right, and that's what the point looked like when I finished trimming it. It has fat that runs all through and marbled throughout the grain of the meat. That's why it cooked a little faster, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, there's a rub that I made up. It's just an easy rub I use a lot on beef. It's Cajun Creole seasoning and some cumin. I like cumin on the beef. The Cajun Creole seasoning has salt, black pepper, red pepper, or cayenne rather, garlic powder and chili powder in it. Now, I know a lot of you Texas guys are like, just use salt and pepper on a brisket. Don't use anything else but salt and pepper. Yeah, I'm not that guy. I'm from Louisiana, and I want some cayenne. I want some flavor on it, all right? And I like cumin on beef, too. I didn't make quite enough. It gets the rub on there, but I probably should have made a little bit more. But I had, you know, enough to get it on there. So we went with that, all right? Once I have it all rubbed down, I throw some hooks in there. All right, I put 2 hooks in each one on the right-hand side, one on the left-hand side of each piece. All right, do that to the flat, and once it's all hooked up, it's time to get the grill thrill on. I like the barrel house the recommended way by putting it with Kingsford charcoal, taking out 1/3 of the Kingsford charcoal, lighting it, and then dumping it back on top. That's mesquite wood chunks you see in there. I use mesquite wood. Once the coals start to light the other coals, I put the barrel on top, and I sit in this old cake pan that I use as a drip pan. I've used it for years. It's stained up, not dirty, but I run it through the dishwasher. But I use it as a water pan in this and other cookers as well. So I set the water pan down in there, put the top on, let it come up to temp for about 10 minutes or so, and then I hang the point right there on the left-hand side of your screen, and I hang the flat on the right-hand side of your screen, and I cover them up, and I let them go for 3 hours without peeking at them, all right? While they cook, I go through the fat trimmings, and I take that red part, any red meat that's attached to the fat, I cut away. Now, I fried the fat up for the dogs, but the red meat I put into this little stock pot. Threw in a sprig of celery, a sprig of rosemary, a stalk of celery, or rib of celery rather, 1/4 of an onion, some salt, a couple cups of water, and I bring it to a boil, and then I turn it down and let it simmer for a couple hours. All right, 3 hours into the cook, and I check on the brisket pieces, all right? The flat, I can see, has drawn up and gotten as tough as a piece of old boot leather at this point, all right? It is not tender yet, and it's not as tender as it was when it was raw. It's not bending at this point, and the thermometer's a little hard to go in, but it's in the 150 range, 153-ish, 154-ish at this point, 3 hours in, and I go ahead and spritz it. Now, what I'm spritzing it with is a 50-50 mixture of that beef broth I just made and Worcestershire sauce. So this is about a 50-50 mix of beef broth and Worcestershire sauce. And I just put it in a little spray bottle, and I spritzed it all over, and I hang it in there, all right? Get back on there, hook wouldn't cooperate. Now it's hooked up. All right, now I check the point. Now the point is a little more tender, and it's also cooking a little faster. It's also a smaller piece of meat. It's around 157, 158-ish at this point, 3 hours in. So it's a little hotter than the flat. But I spritz it,
on both sides. Just, set it across that H-frame right there, spritz it, and hang it back in there. I cover it up for 1 more hour, and at the 4-hour mark, I check it, and they look like this. I can tell it's getting a little more tender, but not much. All right, but it's still in the mid 150 range. So I figured, hey, it's beginning to stall. You see, it's at about 154, 155 right there. So I hang it back up just so I can check the temperature on the point. And oh, don't you fall in there, point. Don't you, I almost wanted to fall. And it's at the 161, 162 range. So it's time to wrap these pieces, all right? What I did was earlier inside, I had made little bags, little pockets with the aluminum foil, folding it over and crimping the edges around. The point of this was to just slip the flat and the point into the bags like this and slip them back on there. I made the bags a little big, especially for the point size because it was a smaller piece of meat. I had to put on my pit mitt because it's hot. But once I get that on there, I just crimp the aluminum foil all around the piece of meat. It's taking on as much smoke as it's going to take on anyway. All right. Leave the top open for a minute, and I pour in a mixture of Worcestershire sauce and beef broth. Now, this is not 50-50. This is about 70% broth to 30% Worcestershire sauce. All right. I pour it in. Then I try to seal the top of the bag the best I can with the hook still hanging out. And I just hang the flat right back in the barrel house, all right? I'm trying to work fast because I don't want to leave the top off of the barrel too long and let the coals get too hot. But once it's in the aluminum foil, if it gets a little hotter than the 220, 250 range, that's all right. Now, this bag that I made for the point cut was, of course, way too big. I tried to fold it over, and I had an issue with it. It leaked, all right? I didn't realize that yet because I hadn't put it in the broth and Worcestershire sauce mixture yet. But when I do, I realize that it's leaking. And I said, hey, that's not good. So I can see it leaking down in the bottom of the tray. I try to tighten it up a little bit and keep it from doing so. But when I hang it in the barrel, I hear the juice, the broth hitting the coals and sizzling. So I run inside and I get another sheet of aluminum foil and I wrap it around. So I let them hang another 4.5 hours, and the flat was at 195 and the point was at about 200. So I go ahead and pull them, and I put them into a small cooler with a towel inside there, wrap it inside the towel, put the towel inside the cooler, and I let them sit for 1.5 hours.
Hey, here's the point, here's the flat. Remember, I split them. So I just checked the thermometer. They're still at about 150. So this thing is still hot. But let's see if we can get it out. Yeah, I wish you could smell it. It smells amazing. My son's just off camera dancing. All right. Let's see. Pull the flat out just like that. Come on. Dump some of that juice onto it. Let's take a look at the point. There's the point. Flip it over. Ooh, I did wind up keeping a lot of that juice in there. All right, set that to the side and let's cut the flat. You remember I said the grain was running this way, so we just got to go right across it. All right. Look at smoke ring on that. Oh my goodness. Now this one's tender. More tender than mine. That part right there is. Let's see if we can get one about pencil thin. Use my thermometer measure. Oh my goodness, look at that smoke ring, yo. All right, bend test. Pull test. It's a little thick, but hey. All right, Eli, try that one. Shannon, my lovely wife, try this one. Did you drop it on the floor? Oh, he dropped it on the floor. What do you think, Shannon?
Wonderful. So good.
That one's a little even thinner. Look.
Tender.
Tender?
Mm-hmm. Juicy.
Look at that smoke ring. That is an amazing smoke ring. Looks like a reverse steak. You know, steak's pink in the middle and white on the outside. Look at that. Wow. All right. Now, set that aside. We're going to eat the flat. It was a little thin flat. That's why I did not want to hang the whole thing on the barrel house. All right. A big old long brisket. It wouldn't quite fit on my kettle grill either. Now, let's take a look at the point. Now, the idea of the point is I am going to chop or pull or shred the point up and cover it in this dark molasses barbecue sauce. I love this stuff, all right? It's made locally kind of, but it's heavy molasses and just a black barbecue sauce. Can you see that in there? I love it. So great with beef. All right, let's cut the point. How was the grain running in the point? Not like that. Yeah, that's across the grain, not like that. All right. That's the point. Smoke ring almost all the way through it. Eli, want to try a piece of the point cut?
Please.
Shannon, the fattier point cut? Yeah, this one got no fat.
Yeah.
Hannah?
It's so good. That's really good.
That has an amazing
Yeah.
flavor.
This is one of the best briskets I have ever done. Oh my goodness.
No taste test, just in case.
The point is going to be sandwich meat. The flat is dinner tonight. Little thin flat. Yeah, that was amazing. That's just awesome. Big Lou barbecue. If the knife was sharper, I could cut a smaller piece. I can get one real thin here.
I got this for you.
That one's pencil thin. That one's pencil thin. Look at the bend test on that. Pencil thin. Look at that. All right, but when you pull it, comes apart.
I want some of the point on my plate tonight.
I don't
Okay.
think that's his taste test material.
All right, y'all. Point. No. Flat. Look at that. Look at that. Happy dance. Brisket on the barrel house. This may be the best brisket I've ever done. The last one I did on the UDS was dry. This one is not.